So this tutorial, we're just going to look a little at how we can set up our max patches so that we can do some more interface-based stuff or performance-based stuff by organizing our patches better, and also save some presets so we don't have to do everything from scratch every time we load up the patch. So I'm just going to show you what we have in the repo that I made for you guys, and then I'll build a little smaller one from example. So let's see here, right here. We got right here, I got some text explaining it and all of that, but basically this is the exact same patch that I had for you guys in week 2, except now I've hidden a lot of the code from you guys, and what you actually have access to is choosing a movie, jumping to random frames, smoothing the image, brightness, saturation, contrast, fading back and forth. So if I just turn it on here and I load in a movie there, load in a movie here, I get some brighter movies here. Maybe that one. Sure, why not? And that's okay, cool. We got our window here. And I can do stuff like I could fade over to this movie. Nice. I could set that. Now we get that kind of blur effect on the lighter colors. Jump around random frames. I also could manually go back and forth with this dial object. And we're getting our frame rate over here, seeing how we're doing with that. And it's also nice to have that because as I turn on different effects and stuff, you might realize oh, that's actually really processing intensive. Before I get to this, I just want to talk about what this is. The reason I have all of this is this is presentation mode. I'm going to turn this off for a second. And down here in this corner, you can see there's a button that says patching mode. It's if I click on it, I'll go back into patching mode. Right now we're in presentation mode. And when I click this, suddenly you see all the code. And like I was saying, this is exactly the same except for this preset object and some of these comments and these panels right here. This is the exact same as that week 2 patch I had, where it's a kind of an example of how you would start building your own video system. And if I unlock the patch here, you can see that some of these boxes, the comments, the toggles, the number box here, they have a red outline around it. And basically anything in my patch, I can add to presentation mode. So if I went right here and click this chip movie object, I can go to Object and say Add to Presentation. And there's a hotkey command right here that I use a lot too. And now, after I click off of it, you can see there's a little red box around that. And it looks like it's probably hidden. Yep. Move that out of the way. So, and what you notice is I can move this anywhere. And if I go back to patching mode, it'll automatically return to where it was in the code. So what's really nice about this is I can start resizing things, removing things, and it won't affect anything about the code. I'm just exposing it so I can view it in this presentation mode. And what you decide to expose in presentation mode is kind of entirely up to what you want to have control over. For example, this actually is a terrible object to have in presentation mode because I can't interact with it. Functionally as code, we need it for what we're doing, but during a performance, I really don't want to go in and start changing the hard code or something. I'd rather make a message like dim $1, $2, pack 00, and then we have our int and our int. But you'll notice I can't actually connect anything in presentation mode. So this is more of just, these are the things I would want in presentation mode. I'd have all this code, but then this is where I'm actually controlling different parameters of it. And you notice that if you actually make something in presentation mode, then it ends up back in your, let's see here, your patching mode. I guess I could hook it up here. But generally you want to make things in patching mode and then decide that it's part of presentation mode and add it in. So really, this is all just about exposing parts of something like this, a U menu, choosing a movie, choosing the jump to random frame toggle. Those are what's important. And that allows us to make something that we can actually start performing with. And you'll also find that your code's probably going to run a little faster and the frame rate's going to be a little better because now once you have these bigger patches, it's using a lot of processing just to render all of the things you're seeing on your screen, even in terms of your patch. So hiding some of that stuff will cause Max to work a little better. Now, going off of that, there's also presets, and this is the preset object right here. Like if I literally just make a object and type preset, kind of like the JIT-P window, when I hit enter, it'll turn into that preset object. And I could go into Inspector to change some of its behavior. I usually like to make it a little bigger. You can see the slot size. I can make it 33 and resize it. Now the grid is just a little more manageable. I could also offset, I think, the spacing between some of it somewhere in here. But anyway, what this is once you have it, it has all these cells where you can store information and recall it. You'll see on the side here I have like 1, and you'll notice that everything changes right here. All the brightness, saturation, contrast goes to 1, random frame jump goes to 500. And I could also go over here to number 2. And it's changed some of the smooth light values on here, smooth dark values on here, saturation on each one. And what I'm doing is I'm using this object to store the values of certain other objects so that I can just have it set up as a preset so that if I want to save a certain look or something, I don't have to go and type everything in. Or if I want to make a hard shift during a performance and I have to change multiple parameters at once, that's another way of doing it. And I'll show you how to set that up. You can also, the way that preset works is it only works with interactive objects, which sounds a little like you'll figure out what those are, but for the most part it's toggles, ints, floats, U menus, anything you can click on or grab on. It's not going to save the state. If I had this at 640 by 480, saved it, and then rewrote 1280 by 720 in here and saved that one, it's not going to remember that. Anything that's hard-coded into something, or any like coding changes, like if I added something on the route, it's not going to remember that. It's just anything you can kind of grab onto and click onto and enact change that way. And then there's also going to be times when you make a preset and you save a preset, it's just going to automatically remember everything in that patch. It kind of exposes itself in that, or anything is exposed to it to be saved. But this third outlet here, you can have it connect to objects to exclude from the preset. So an example is I excluded my turn on button here for the Q Metro and my U menus right here. You might actually want certain movies to be set up that way, but I like to think of it as like I have these different looks right here. And I just want to get that, but I don't want it to change the movie that I'm playing because I want to try something else. I also don't want to like accidentally save something while the patch is off and then click on something here and then suddenly it turns off because I had saved it with the off state, which has happened to me in the past. So yeah, this is, you can go through this on your own and use it as kind of a template for what I'm explaining, but I'll just build a really simple version for the moment just so that it's a little less obtuse and weighted down. So if I just do the basics, JIT grab, that's an object, message open, Q Metro, 33 because we want 30 frames a second, toggle, and JIT-P window. And here I am in my apartment, like always, making these tutorials for you, my students. Awesome. I gotta fix my hair. There we go. So what we want to do is let's just do a basic JIT Precosa. One of the simpler ways of changing the image, and I'll do the brightness, $1, option drag. I'll change this to saturation, and this one to contrast. And then I get a float for each FFF. Brilliant. And I'll intercept over here. Now I can change the brightness, change the saturation, change the contrast. Wonderful. But the thing is, if I was doing a performance, I don't need to see this. I don't need to see this. I don't even need to see this message box. I just need to see this, 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 and this. Because they're the only things I can interact with. I might also want to see this, just so I have a basis for it while I'm performing. Just remember that these take up a lot of processing power. So if you just keep adding these to your patch, it's going to run really slow. So you have to be a little judicious with your usage of that. So I'm just going to grab these three things right here. I'm holding shift, I'll drag across that, hold shift. I go to object, I'll say add to presentation, and I just talked about that. I want that one too, I'll add that to presentation. Now they have the little red box around it. I can go into presentation mode. There's also a hotkey, I think. If you go to view, you could also say presentation mode. And yeah, this is shaping up kind of nicely. Now I get to make a little interface. I don't have all that other code kind of getting in my way. And like I said, there's no right or wrong way to do this. You just kind of have to, oh, sorry about that. You just kind of have to set it up the way that makes the most sense to you and that you can remember. And I use comments pretty commonly. So like if that one right here, I'll say brightness. If I do Command J, it'll automatically shorten it. Saturation. Contrast. I could even put like an on comment there. And you see that, you know, this is no different than our other code. It's just now we've exposed the parameters we want to have access to and hidden the rest of the code. And this already feels much more more like an interface, like more like something where there's just parameters we can grab onto and we don't have to worry about where things are located. And if I go back to patching mode, everything just snaps back into place. Actually, let's see here. And one thing you'll notice, like I said, is those comments do end up making, I made them in patching mode, but, or sorry, presentation mode, but now they're in my patching mode. And you know, sometimes like even in this mode, I like to have the comments right here. But honestly, you could also just have a corner of your patch where you just kind of drag and hide all of it, and it'll just automatically. It'll just automatically snap back into place based on what you did in presentation mode. And then lastly, like I said, we get the preset mode here. And I hate how small these initially start off, so I'll go back to, I'll do 50. There we go. Maybe that's a bit much, but it's my decision, it's my patch. I like them that big, I guess. And so I need to add that to presentation mode. Just a Command Option P, and you see that red box, or no, Shift Option P. Now I have this. And the way to set something is simply to just hold the Shift button. Like, look at, they're kind of a dark gray right now. And if I hold the Shift button and click, now there's a lighter gray. I wish it was like a slightly different color because it's like so minuscule to like even notice the difference. And while doing that, what happened was it looked for the toggle and said, okay, that toggle's on. This brightness is at 1, the saturation's at 1, this contrast is at 1. Cool, I'm going to remember all that. I'm going to go over here, and maybe that's a bit extreme, 5, and then -3, and I'll do Shift, and I'll click there. And now if I go back and forth, I have those presets saved. And I could do another one at and a convention I use a lot of times is the very first cell I'll set up so that nothing is affecting my image. So it's like kind of like a clean initial state. Because you're going to get like some kind of crazy areas with your patches, and sometimes you just want to start from scratch, and it's nice to have one button where you can just be like, okay, this is the initial state, so to speak. And like I said, one thing to be careful is you might save something with that patch closed, Shift-click, And these are all, and then like in the middle of a performance, you forgot that you saved it with like that setting. So one thing I might like to do is just hook up, and you see if I hover over it, it says object, connect to objects to exclude from a preset. And now hopefully, actually the reason that's not working is because I needed to have it initially connected, so it did remember all that. So that's something you would want to do at the beginning, is just make sure before you start saving anything. And like you can, there's other ways, you don't have to do this, you could also say store one, and I can overwrite what was in there. You know, and see, so like now I've replaced it with what the initial state was there. You can even write files. If I open the help here, the preset object can get pretty, not complex, but it has a lot of like, if you close the patch and save it and reload it, it'll remember the settings for you, but it's also easy to erase everything, like I just did right there with that message. You can write and read files that'll save everything in a preset file for you so that you can have a backup in case something happens. But yeah, that's kind of the basics of like how to make an interface and how to save your presets. This is horrific looking. So yeah, I encourage you all to take some of the work that you've been doing and use the presentation mode and the presets to try and make it something that feels a little more like an instrument or a tool that you can play, rather than just a mess of code that you kind of tweak and don't really know how to get back into sometimes. So have fun with that.